The very outset of the year, Rosh Hashanah, Hayom Harasolam, the recreation of Adam Arishan, we start out yet again. First thing we have to be mesaking l'choro is our midi de achila and yonei achila when it comes to food. Same way Rav Tzaddik Cohen writes, a few places in Pri Tzaddik, Malshavas Choretz, and other Mekomos throughout the Sifrei Rav Tzaddik, that Adam and Chava were tested with what? They were placed into Gan Eden. And all of the mitzvahs aseh, the mitzvahs lo aseh, they all revolved around what? This is what you can eat, and this is what you can't eat. As the Radak, Rabbeinu Machai, the Meshach Chochmah, and Bereshis Parak Beis Pasuk Tezayin, before we even encountered the very first lo aseh in the Torah, that of Meitz Hadas Tov V'Ro Lo Socha Mimenu, you are enjoined, prohibited from partaking of the Eitzadas Tovero. That tzivoy of a mitzvah lo saseh was first preceded by a mitzvah saseh. And what was that? Mikol Eitzagan Ochel Tochel. I want you to go into my garden, and I'm giving you a tzivoy meyuchad, writes the Radak, Rabbeinu Machai, the Meshach Chochmah. I am giving you a mitzvah saseh. Go into my garden of paradise and consume the apples, the oranges, the coconuts, the mangoes. I want you to enjoy all the culinary delights that I've graced this world with. Ad Kedei Kach, the Rameir Simcha from the Vinsk is machadesh that perhaps this very pasuk is the asmachtis kilu, the makar, the very source for the famous memra in the Yerushalmi, the end of Kedushin, Perek Dalet Halacha Yud Beis, that Amar Lazar Asa Litein Din V'Cheshben HaKomash. We're going to have to give a doch, a din mecheshbon, and a reckoning, an accounting of all the things that our eyes beheld and we did not partake of them. God showed you steak, He showed you pizza, He showed you fish. I want you to taste it at least. Where's the makor? How can Chazal tell us such a zach? There's got to be a basis. Where is that? All right, so Meir Simcha, all God had to say was don't eat from this tree, and I could draw the obvious inference. I could be left with the mashmos. Then the Mela, I can eat from every other tree. But yet, what did Hashem use? Do? He gave Adam and Chava tziva miyuchan mikol eitzagan achon tochel. I want you to go into my garden. I want you to davka to eat from everything. Why? Because I want you to go ahead and derive hana, pleasure, benefit from every single thing that I graced Adam and Chava, that I blessed this world with, and that would be the makor for that memra and kedushin and the Yerushalmi Daled Yud Beis. Mikol eitzagan achon tochel. I want you to enjoy everything. So if Tzaddik has an arichas, there's kunshas and achila as well. Same way we have in our slang, you are what you eat. That's one of the reasons, parenthetically, we got to stay away from egozim, tavka pei gimel. Stay away from nuts. Why? Because you are what you eat. In the end of the day, we don't want to be nuts going into Rosh Hashanah. Again, we know gematria ego scheit with an aleph, without an aleph, ima kola, without a kolel, is a big arichas. We're so makbid. Why are we so makbid on what do we eat on Rosh Hashanah? On Aser Samei Tshuva, one simon after Tafra Reish Beis and Orchaim, when the Machaber tells us this is a tkufa wherein we have to be marbe betfilas b'tachanunim, and that I can understand is the Rambam makes it clear in Ochos Tshuva Per Gimel Locha Daled Mnei Inyan Zeh, because it's Kiyah Shofars. The Lechem Mishnah explains no go kol Beis Yisrael laharbus b'tztokov v'masim tovim v'lasav gemitzvos b'yom elu bein Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippurim yesem mikol shar Yom Rosh Hashanah. I have to be marbe, I have to get up early in the morning and my davening, have to increase the tfilas, the tachanunim, the tztokov, the masim tovim. That's Tafresh Base. All the Mechama writes is increasing your tefillas. And then he has one line in Tafresh Gimel, writes, or Yosef Cairo, Tafresh Gimel, even those people who are not nizar, they're not careful to abstain, to refrain from eating pas palter during the course of the year. And Asesame Tshuva, you should be nizar, should be ever careful to only eat pas Yisrael. Okay? The poskim, the high-tech poskim say, if you're not makbid and chavi Yisrael about it, this is the time. All when it comes to achila, that's all he has to say. Machaber is silent, glaringly silent. He doesn't say an echo of the Rambam, and we know that even though he bases all of his Piskei Halachas, he writes in his Akdama on the Shittas of the Gedolei Rishonim of the Rif, the Rosh, and the Rambam, we see clearly throughout his Beis Yosef and his Shulchan Aruch that he goes and gives extra weight to the Rambam, and yet the Rambam talks about increasing your tzedakah, increasing your masim tovim and your tefillah. And what does the Mechaber do? Doesn't talk about tzedakah, doesn't talk about masim tovim, doesn't talk about osig mitzvahs. What does he talk about? Increased tefillah and be careful by food. Why this spotlight turned on food? But like Rav Tzaddik HaKohen, we understand, because the same way Adam and Chava, the very outset of their creation, what were they tested with? Eat this and don't eat that. How do we start Rosh Hashanah? Hashanah. Eat this and don't eat that. To make sure, don't eat agozim. Why? Because Gematria, because yes, the Levush says the reason that the Rama writes in Tafabei Gimel, it's really about the Marbe Kichem, and it increases hawking and phlegm, and we don't want you to stare the Kavan, as the Mate Ephraim writes in the middle of the Shmon Esrei and Rosh Hashanah the Yom Adin, and it's all about tefillas. We want you to have extra special Kavanah for the Maisa. There's a reason because of a Gematria. We discussed in the past, there's the famous fish debate. What's the fish debate? The Avodram, and the Balatani, and the Shulchan Aruch Harav, and the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, and the Nesivos and the Derech Chaim. And most of the post-commission is an Indian, but to have fish on Rosh Hashanah. To have fish, why? It's in the Hiratzins. You have the whole Sugyan, Huriyos and Daf. You're based on an Aleph, and the Sugyan increases in Daf, Vav, Abaye. We want a Simon Tova, Simona Tova, Simona Milsa, the beginning of the year. With what? How careful we're going to be, what we eat, what we don't eat. Let's give Simona 2-hour food. And we have all these Gedolei and Poskim telling us, eat fish at the beginning of the year. Why? Shenifra v'nibra kedagim. Many people even have the head of a fish. Shia, Nia, Larosh, below the Zanot. But Shenifra v'nibra kedagim. Let's have this Gavaldiga Simon. And yet, the Chido writes in his Birka Yosef and Simon Tavkuf Tzani Zayin and Sifkot and Dalit, he writes based on a Tashbetz. The Tashbetz writes in its Cherushei Rashbetz and Rosh Hashanah Chafayim and Aleph, because there's one place in all of Tanakh. Rabbi say one place. Dog is spelled Dalet Gimel, but there's one place in Gan Tanakh and Sefer Nehemiah, Perkid Gimel Posek Tazayin, where Dog is spelled Dalet Aleph Gimel, a silent Aleph. Writes the Chidah based on the Tashbetz, since Dog is spelled but one place in all of Tanakh, Aloshin of Daigo, we don't want to have any Daigo on Rosh Hashanah. I don't know, you're supposed to have a Bissel Daigo on Rosh Hashanah, but it's Muramis to Daigo, which is a pejorative connotation, worry. It's a negative aspect, therefore let's keep it off the table. And he repeats it in Machzik Bracha in Simon Tov Kavtzari Zayin, and he cites a Zohar, Tikuni Zohar, Tikun Chavalov, that actually does associate a dog with Daigo, Dalet Gimel with Dalet Aleph Gimel Hey. I may love best to keep it off the table, and that's what the Chido Paskins in his Morah Batzvah, Birkei Yosef, Machzik Bracha, Morah Batzvah, Paskins, Allah Lamaisa, like the Tashbetz, has the Raya from the Tikuni Zohar, Tikun Chavalov, keep the fish off the plate. I have an Ava Jerome in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch and the Derech Chaim, and you have all these Gavad Mate Ephraim, eat dogim. He does says keep it off the table. Keep the fish off the table. Now we mentioned how white people go. I mentioned the Machzor Vitri from the base Medrash of Rashi and Simon Shin Chaf Aleph says Yibadavka should have red apples, not stam apples, have red apples. Yet the Otzar Yad Chaim says in Simon 7:14 and Tavshin Yadalid Badavka don't have red apples because red is reminiscent of Sid. Have red, don't have red. Just because of the color, we're going to make a big deal. And then we mentioned the Sefer Zivim and Hagim, page 156. They say it's not in the regular Menhagim Sam Sefer Sfarim, but in Zivim and Hagim says that the Sam Sefer was knowing not to drink seltzer on Rosh Hashanah. Why? Because the carbonated water would be reminiscent of anger flaring up. The bubbles, anger flaring up, kept it off the table. Again, it's a whole big shiloh because you have to know when carbonated beverages, John Matthews, Philadelphia, and the early 1800s, when it even came out, how does that stem with the Leiblich Sam Sefer? That's something we spoke about, we wrote about. That's not for now. Either way, let's get back to fish debate. Fish debate, do you have fish, do you not have fish? So all the Gedolei and Poskim, there's an Indian Medafka to have fish, and here you have a Chidah says don't have fish. What do we do on Erev Yom Kippur? Here we are in Aser Semei Tshuva, and the Torah writes very clearly, Rav Avram Shorn is Alekach Malibov, writes the Torah, Simon Tov Reish Dalet, we're no again on Erev Yom Kippur. It's a whole Sigim Brochus. It's a mitzvah, Kol Ochel, so we bedavka eat. And not only do we eat, Rav Tzadok Cohen writes, so Asemes writes, in the whole Gerard dynasty, Imre Yemes v'chulei, you could be ma'ala, you could elevate and uplift all the Shara Chilas b'Shar Yemos Hashanah. You could uplift Ayadei the Ma'isa Chilas Shem Shemaim. People think it's an easy mitzvah to eat on Erev Yom Kippur. It's a very difficult mitzvah. At the end of the day, what are you eating for? Same way the Beis Halevi says, Avram Avinu was told Lech Lecha. Here's the big nisayin. Lech Lecha. So Rashi Api the Medrash LaNascha Tavascha. Frank developed the kasha. So what's the nisayin? Who wouldn't go LaNascha Tavascha? Teretz says, what are you going now for? Are you going LaNascha Tavascha? Are you going Ach V'Rak because Kach goes Olay HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Here Erev Yom Kippur, what are you eating for? Oh, Gemalda, because you want to chaparine, because you want to get in all the delicacies, all the culinary delights, so you can eat Ach V'Rak L'Shem Shamayim. If you eat L'Shem Shamayim, you could be Ma'ala, you could uplift and elevate all the Shara Chilas of Kol Yemos Hashanah. This is the Hashlam of Vayomer HaSolam. Semi Adam and Chava, their whole Test came down to what? Eat this and don't eat that. Eat l'shem shamayim, and had they eaten l'shem shamayim, or Meir Simcha writes, that would have shielded them and protected them, that they never would have succumbed to the lure and temptation of the Yetzer Hara. So eat l'shem shamayim, Gavaldik. Eat l'shem shamayim. The two writes, Allah Kamaisa, be marbe besuda, and he writes, is in having dogim. You bedavka should have dogim. Now, why should we have dogim? Why should I go out of my way and have dogim? Over here, this maybe Rosh Hashanah, all the Ramazan we start, but here, bedavka, you should have a fish on the Suda Rosh Hashanah. Has always stayed until, where's it coming from? Listen to this, Rav Gedalia, Rav Avram Shor. Lekach v'libuv, ha'erev Yom Kippurim daf kuf pei gimel. Avreisi b'bir ha'inyan dvorim nefloim, quotes the Sefer, the famous Heilige Sefer, Meir Einich Chachamim, Chelik Gimel and Yonah Erev Yom Kippur. The Gemara says in Chulin, writes the Meir Chachamim Chav Zayin Amud Beis, we know that when it comes to behemoths, you want to shecht an animal, and you have to shecht an animal before you can eat it. So you want a piece of steak, you want some flesh. So what do you have to do? Behema, you have to shecht 2 simonim. And the oath is what? Sagi be simin echad. For a bird, what do you do? 1 simin. Dogim. You don't need any shchita. Sifa min hayam ba'am. All you got to do is you go in, you slap, like the bear, you slap it, that's it. You take the fish out, you throw it on the grill. As long as it's got the fins and the scales, you're good to go. Snapper v'kaskasas, and you can eat it, you don't need any shchita. So again, animals, you need 2 simonim. A bird, you need to shecht 1 simin. And fish, asifim and ayam, you don't need to shecht them at all. What's the reason? Writes the Meir Chacham, listen to this, Rabbi Sai. Writes the Sefer Meir Chacham, quoting this from HaKadoshim. And this is something we mentioned that Rizal talks about in the Kutei Torah Parsha Shemini. The Munkach Rebbe and Arichas in his Sefer Devrei Torah, the Yismach Moshe talks about it. Many Heilige Sfarim. The nefesh of a behema, that's when a rasha is not worthy of going into, even the Maduri enemy has to come back to Gilgal. A rasha comes back as a behema. All right, this from a Kadoshim. A Benoni comes back as a bird. A tzaddik, when he's in his galgal, comes back as a fish. If you want to go ahead and be ma'aleh, the nefesh, the nitzutz of a neshama, of a rasha, then what do? You got to shech 2 simonim. The rasha, you got to slice it nice and good. Konin the meshet, that's the rasha. He needs the tikkun, he needs that pain 2 simonim. The adam beinani, you don't have to shech 2 simonim. All right, that suffices what? The beinani comes back into a bird. That's 1 simon. 1 simon's going to work. That's going to be enough. And the tzaddik who's nisgalgal as a dog, as a fish, and we mentioned dog is Gematria 7, that's an Indian of Shleimus. The tzaddik goes mostly full, only has to come back. Yosef Moker Shabbos, make 1 bracha Friday night. It's an Indian that Rizal says, have fish Friday night. And Bimala, you don't need to shechta, you don't need to cut. That's already in the Neshama Gilgal of a tzaddik. You don't need 2 simonim, you don't need 1 simon. So the rasha, that's going to be a lot of blood, that's going to be cutting, that's 2 simonim. The Veinani, 1 simon in the tzaddik you don't need to shecht it all. So adds Rav Avram Shor, he says, now this Rabbi said, before we get to Rav Avram Shor, I bought this, it's a Moedik, a Sefer Sifsei Chein, how dominant Sefer Chasidus to Shmuel Christ in a few volumes on a lot of different inyanim. I'm just going to share with you 1 tidbit. This is going to blow you away. I don't want anyone to have any nightmares or anything like that, but this is real. You heard of the Rabbi. You know, the biography came out earlier this year. Rabbi, he was in this world, he was above this world, he was Mam Shlomayim Manatzav, he didn't sleep, he didn't eat. Listen to this story, page 17 of the Hagdom of Sifsei Chein and Yom Noroim. He says, the Machaber, the Shmuel Christ was once together in Los Angeles with the Ribnitzer Rebbe. He was Yosef in Los Angeles. They would go on Thursday together with the Ribnitzer Rebbe, who was living in Los Angeles at that kufa, and they went down to the river to get fish, lekavod shamas kaidish. So they went on Thursday and they went to go fishing. The Ribnitzer, can you imagine? I would have loved to be a fly in the wall, not a worm on the wall, but a fly in the wall when they went fishing. So they went fishing on Thursday to get fish for Shabbos. The Ribnitzer Rebbe and the Sifsei Chein. Listen to this. So they're mamish, they're catching fish. The Ribnitzer Rebbe would catch a fish. A kama would happen quite frequently. The Ribnitzer Rebbe, he would hold the fish, look at the fish, he would stare at the fish and say, zeh dog. No, this is a gilgal of a rasha. Throw it right back into the sea. Pick up another one. No, that's a Beinoni. I don't want to eat him on Friday night. And throw him back to the sea. Then he'd pick up a fish and say, there is a gute bocher. There is a gute bocher. You look at the fish and say, that's a gute bocher. And that fish, this is the one we're going to eat Friday night. And Mameli says, what what they were talking about, the Chaysis, I don't know, Sod Kedoshim, Abba Derim Netzah, when he said it's a good, then he would go and eat that fish. So you have good Dabach, you have good Tzadikim, come back when they have to be Nesgago, they come back as a fish. Right, so Avram Shore. So why in Erev Yom Kippur is there an Indian that the Torah says, Lamaisa, whatever you did in Rosh Hashanah, did you eat fish, did you not eat fish? Everybody, you should make sure to take out a bissel, gefilte fish, right? How do you recognize a gefilte fish? It's a little fish in the water swimming with a piece of carrot on its back. And the end of the day, right, so you have your gefilte fish, you have your tuna, whatever it is that you take out in the suit of Erev Yom Kippur, this is the chance, the golden opportunity to be ma'ala, to uplift and elevate all the achilas in Rosh Hashanah. So why do I have to bring a fish to the table, right? So Avram Shore. If the Arizal told us, and the Meir and Chachamim, and they all told us that a tzaddik's neshama is in a skagal as a fish. And Mela, when you're sitting on Erev Yom Kippur, and what happens so many times, a person gets a little guy that says, okay, what do I really have to do tshuva for? Maybe you're going to think, I'm not such a bad guy, I did some good things, and I don't have to be afraid. What I have to pachad, I have to cry in Yom Kippur. What am I so afraid of? Sit down on Erev Yom Kippur, and put the fish on the table, and remember the Arizal, and remember the Munkatcher, and the Yisach Moshe, and the Meir and Chachamim, that even a tzaddik sometimes has to come back. A nitzitz of a neshama of a tzaddik, even a tzaddik Hashem is medaktik with tzaddikim kuchut osayri yivamus kuchavalim. And if even the tzaddik has to come back when you're eating that fish, and you're saying, hey, wait, I'm eating that fish, even the tzaddik had to come back? Even groisa tzaddikim and free the gross, even tarabachim, they had to come back. They too had to come back as you're chewing on that fish, and you're being ma'alav, that nitzitz of the neshama of that tzaddik. If the tzaddik had to come back, Allah has come, we better do tshuva. Erev Yom Kippur, as you're eating that fish, and you're thinking that tzaddiks and neshama had to come back. If he had to come back, then Achas Kama Kama Ochlim Dogim Dafka. Why? Laura Kiba Dogim Nitzam Neshama Satzadikim Shaboli Yolam Azeva Gilgal had to be Messiah Mamela. Al Omek Dikta Kadin Sheyesh Pa'ilam Shaf Tzadikim Nidon LeGilgal Mamela Yizah Adam Lashav Tshuva. Make sure to go in and do a tshuva. And that's what we want to keep in mind. But perhaps we can add on also the Heilige Bluzhav Rebbe Shufar Di Yisrael on all of them. The Heilige Bluzhav Rebbe Yisrael Bluzhav says Gavaldik page 239 Rabbi side. What's V'Yidgol Arabah Kerv? It's the same way that Dogib. They don't eat shchita. If you don't eat shchita, that means you'll never have a shaila of nevelas or treifas by a fish. That means what? You can have an animal, and it looks good, and it looks holy, and it looks great, and you can cut into it. It could be messed up. It could be a treifa, nevelas, treifas, and then it's possible. A fish which doesn't require shchita never has a shaila. That means a fish that's tar, was tar, is tar, and always will be tar. That's the bracha of Yidgol Arov Kavrot Zok B'Lushav Rebbe. Yaakov was saying, Yidgol Arov Menash and Ephraim. You guys stay tar in Mitzrayim. I give you a bracha. You should be like the fish. Once tar, always tar. I don't want you to have any psul. Zok the blush of Rabbi, but derech zeh. That's why in Rosh Hashanah we bedavka should eat fish and nifra v'nirba kedokim. What's nifra? We should produce children who are going to be tahor. May aschol out of sof. And that's why the blush of Rabbi is very makbid to have, not only like the Torah and Erev Yom Kippur, but like the Gedolei HaPoskim, have the fish on the Rosh Hashanah. Why? To think that just like they're tahor from beginning to the end of their lives, once Torah always told, no shilas of tumah, of nevelas, of treifas, no shchita. Be pure throughout. That's the mindset of Rosh Hashanah going through Yom Kippur. Be pure throughout, but dafka go out and have the fish. But think about which tzaddik you might be tapping into and elevating. And when you're thinking about the tzaddik, you come back, you better clap al chay. Get ready for the tshuva, the vidui. If the tzaddik had to come back, I better go have the pachad of the din. And Yom Kippur, do tshuva, eat the fish, enjoy it, but make sure to do tshuva in the process. A good gebench